I know what you're saying, like why me? I think one thing I learned earlier from one of my buddies was instead of saying why me, he would just say why not me. And I think that was like a pivotal moment in my life.
Welcome to another episode of the Built to Scale podcast. I'm your host, Shmuel Hirschberg, and today's guest is Dr. Charles Livingston, a chiropractor turned digital marketer turned coffee company founder and CEO of Life Boost Coffee. Here's what I love about Charles. At some point, he looked at a crowded market and asked himself, why not me? Not in an arrogant way, in a builder's way. He saw a problem nobody was solving, trusted his instincts, and built a brand from scratch that now ships tens of thousands of orders. In this episode, we get into what it actually takes to go from zero to a real DTC brand, how he validated direct response funnels, how he navigated supply chain chaos, and why he still looks at every support ticket. This episode is dedicated to anyone and everyone who sat on an idea and never built it. If that's you and you've been waiting for permission to go build something, this is your episode. And like always, hit subscribe, tap that thumbs up button, or leave us a review. Got that? We're good? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Now, let's get into it. If you're sitting, relax. If you're at the gym, pick up the pace because this episode is going to make you question why you haven't started yet. I'm your host, Shmuel Hirschberg, and this is the Built to Scale podcast. Listen up and let's start scaling now.
I don't know if I can raise my seat or not. Let me try. Is that better?
Yeah, I want to make you look as pretty as possible. Awesome. Yeah, so today's guest is Dr. Charles Livingston. He's a chiropractor. He's the founder and CEO of Life Boost Coffee, and it's a real pleasure to have him on the Built to Scale podcast because this guy knows about scaling businesses. Dr. Charles, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So why don't you just give us a little recap, quick summary of what you've been up to the past couple of years?
Yeah. I mean, so like I've been all over the marketing world. You know, I had Fat Loss Factor, that was a digital weight loss program from there, Perfect Origins, which was a supplement company. And then, I found my way into coffee, and that's where I've been for basically the past since about 2019. I started the
Okay.
business in 2015, didn't really scale it till I brought on my partner in 2019. And then from there, like that was pretty much the only thing I focused on. So
Really?
like anything else, I just cut away.
So you're not doing any chiropractic or anything like that?
No, I stopped doing that. So I practiced that for about 5 years and retired, and that was in like 2007, maybe? Something like that.
Okay, very cool. So
Yeah.
you just pivoted from there.
Yeah, yeah. Once I
Okay.
got a taste of online, businesses, I was like, "Okay, I like this."
You like that. And then tell us about like how you got into the world of coffee because I'm actually myself a coffee aficionado. I like I have my machine and I grind my own coffee every day and testing all the different drinks out. But how did you stumble upon it and actually decide, hey, you know what? I'm not just going to drink it. I'm going to turn it into a little business.
Yeah, so I started to get into into coffee in my mid 30s. It started with, bulletproof coffee and putting the butter in the coffee and doing all that. And so I did that for a while. And for me, like I was like, okay, if this is something that I want to do, and with coffee, you're a coffee drinker, you're drinking 3 to 5 cups a day, 365 days a year, right? 20 years plus. Like you're not missing a day. That's just who we are. That's what 70% of the population of the world drinks coffee, and it's the third most drank beverage in the world. So like my whole thing is like, I've always been a health nut, obviously I was a chiropractor. But even before that, I was a health nut. And like, if it's so things that I do every single day, I always try to find the absolute best version of that. And so with coffees, like some of the coffees I was drinking, I didn't like, they were okay, but it just didn't quite match the criteria that I was looking for personally. And so I created a process to be able to curate the beans. And, we call it our trust pure process.
And this was just for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is part of the evolution of Life Boost. So I was like, okay, I need to look for this, this, this. And then we added some things after we started that like just took it to the next level. But yeah, I mean, that's how I started. I was just looking for a better option that matched my needs. And I figured that, you know, if, if people like if I wanted this, I'm sure there were other people. There's probably an audience of other people who were very similar. Yeah, that's kind of how Life Coach started. I just started to do my research and, here we are now.
So I love it. I love it. So you're getting your beans, and I believe from what I saw online, you're getting them from Nicaragua.
Yeah, usually it's somewhere in Central America. We try to get it. We always do single origin, but the region, it'll be usually somewhere around there because we don't want it to be like too different from batch to batch, right?
Okay.
But for us, it meets the criteria that we're looking for, and I like the flavor a lot, and that's very important to me too. Is like how it tastes.
So that's a big selling point is the
Yeah,
flavor.
that's
I'm
you're not gonna keep doing it if it doesn't taste good, right?
for sure the freshness. Is there anything else like hidden tricks, hidden unique selling points up your sleeve that I don't know?
No, not really. I mean, it just needs to be like for me, like I think toxin tested was really important. Yes, it is certified organic, but like nowadays, the older I get, the more skeptical I get. And if you've ever read the book, The Fifth Agreement, there was one really popular one. The most popular one is the Four Agreements. I can't, Manuel Ruiz something was the author's name. Came out with
Okay.
another book called The Fifth Agreement. And the Fifth Agreement is to trust, but be skeptical. So I'm like, the older I get, the more skeptical I become of things. So it's one of those, I think, I don't know, one of the presidents said, Reagan or something, said, trust but verify. So, you know, even though something's certified organic, I want to verify that. So that's why we added the third party testing for coffee, for toxins. We test for like glyphosate and molds and heavy metals because like small amounts of that add up in your body. So the more that happens, like over time, it just bioaccumulates and then it starts to cause symptoms. And like all of a sudden, you're like, I don't know why, but I have stomach pain and, or I've got headaches or, I've got gut issues, whatever it is.
And so you realize this with coffee that in general, like a lot of coffees will have like toxins in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you like look at the research, it's pretty heavy, like quite a bit of coffee has toxins. And part of it's you know, where it's grown, conditions it's grown in, how they process it, how it's stored, how it's transported. Then once it's transported, how it's stored again. And, so there's a lot of different areas in the supply chain that can, you know, cause, when mold is something that we look at a lot.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
that for us
so
is important.
yeah. So walk me through just how you basically went from trying to source your own coffee beans to saying, all right, a lot of people probably have this issue. A lot of people are probably want pure, non-toxic coffee that's been verified and everything. So you set up the business, you start, and then what? You're knocking on cafe doors. You're opening up a website and selling. What's your go to market strategy here?
Yeah. So so my whole, I guess philosophy on health, which also I kind of apply to businesses like least invasive to most invasive. So I guess in business, this would be least expensive to most expensive way to test, right? So what we did, or what I did at first, was just crafted a sales letter. My roots are direct response marketing.
Yeah, that's
We
right. Yeah,
just
for
slowly
sure.
evolved that. I had to slowly evolve that over time to match
And
the.
I think that's where we first met.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Probably fat loss factor, I imagine.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, probably
Yeah.
like
Years ago.
Going back like 12, 13 years, I'd say.
Yeah. So I just crafted a sales letter. I had a bunch of affiliates, and I just asked if they want to test this out. I gave them a good CPA on it, and we started to get traction. And so I was like, okay, I've got something here. And so we just slowly built on that. And then the next step was to get that to work on paid media, right?
Okay.
So as I was building the email list, also from the affiliates mailing, I collect their emails as customers, and I never really did a lead list. I mainly just focused on just conversion.
Okay. Makes sense for your business, right?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like a yes or no type of a product. Like,
Yeah.
do you want
I'm
coffee? Yes. Great. Buy a bag. If you like it, buy more. Right.
uh, so my goal is not to have to convince you that much over time, because it's not that expensive of a product. It's a premium coffee product for sure, but like you're not buying like a $100 or $200 whatever. So
Yeah.
I
So
just
there is a premium. It's not like buying like a pound of Dunkin
correct.
or
Yeah.
whatever Costco coffee, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you had basically you're just selling online, right? And you're dealing with everything, right?
Yeah.
Is and this was totally new for you because before you were more into like e-products and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? Like in terms of just all of a sudden one day you have inventory, you have supply chain issues, you have all customer success or customer complaints, depending which way you want to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I did early was, I was big on customer feedback. So I was doing a lot of the customer support at first, just so I could get feedback about what people like and dislike about the product. And even to this day, like I still have my support tickets forwarded to my personal Gmail account. And
Wow.
so I can just like scan them every single day. So I can look for patterns. Pattern recognition for me, I think, is something that I use a lot. And I'm always looking for patterns, and is something going on with the coffee? Is the taste off? Is what are people's complaints? And that way I can like keep a running list or mention it to my team, and we can fix it.
That's such an important fact in terms of just getting into it and just seeing that feedback loop and seeing what the people on the ground are saying about it and not just, sitting in your CEO chair and saying, you know what, I'm just going to let customer support deal with everything and,
I think that's the
not deal
biggest
with
mistake
it.
you ever
Like
make.
you really get to see what's going on in the trenches and what people really believe and say about your product. So was there anything ever that you were just like thrown for a loop like, oh wow, I didn't even think about that, like whether it's like delivery or price?
Yeah, I mean, the way that coffee works, the pricing when you purchase it, you purchase a green coffee, it goes up and down, and like if you're a member or if you're on any newsletters of like industry newsletters, they'll talk about prices. Oh, Brazil had like one of the big things that happened last year was I think they had a drought or something, and it totally like cut their coffee production by a huge amount. And so Brazil is one of the number one places that everybody buys coffee from. So if that starts to dry up, then it starts to push the supply chain other places. So it's like a trickle down effect. It hits everybody, right? And so then that's when last year there was like a 20% surge in coffee prices across the board, from cafes to, D2C. And we were always one of the more premium priced ones. And now everybody's like coming up to us because of just the market pressure. And so that was something that was, we had to navigate through carefully, because not only that, you had COVID with all the supply chain issues, and, trying to get, you know, coffee bags from China or, another country. So you have to manage, you have to have some type of financial literacy or have somebody on your team like we have a CFO who can help you navigate and manage your COGS and all this because they shift so much in coffee, especially. But I'm sure it's like any food and beverage will have a similar issue.
Yeah, for sure. And the sales that you're looking at today and the inventory that's going out today is stuff that you purchased, a week ago, a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, whatever it is, and those price fluctuations can change your
Yeah,
bottom
so
line.
it's market timing when to buy the coffee so you can get a good price, so you can decrease your COGS. You know, knowing your gross margin is super important.
Hmm.
Obviously, your net profit or EBITDA, is super important.
So actually
Especially if
getting
you're
in and
yeah,
following well for your niche, the coffee industry, like what's going on in the
yeah,
international coffee markets is going to be super important, and then putting in orders and stuff. So in terms of just supplies and stuff, you're buying only certain times a year, like a handful of times a year, or steady.
yeah. We try to predict how much coffee we need for the next year.
Okay.
So, and then we'll purchase that amount, and then once we can gauge, we'll know when to buy the next round, right? Because
See,
like we've built a business where we're not like spiking and dropping. We're trying to like my whole thing is slow and steady wins the race.
steady climb, right? That's it.
Yeah, I'm not the rabbit or the hare. I'm more the tortoise.
Yeah.
I would rather build things slow and steady than like just race for growth.
And you probably focused on those repeat buyers and
Yeah,
having that
yeah,
annual revenue.
for sure.
Is that how much stock do you put into that in terms of just customer acquisition versus customer retention?
I would say so. I took so we really don't have a CMO anymore. We kind of split them in half. So I have a director for paid, and then I have a director for retention. And I think together it's too big for one person to do accurately and well. It's
Okay.
just too much. Yeah, and for me, it's worked well for us to do it this way. I think it's two different skill sets. So
Hmm.
we put a lot into retention just because I don't like the churn and burn. Because you work hard to get a customer, and it's much harder to get a customer than it is to keep a customer.
It's harder to get the customer than to keep the customer. Yep, for sure. For sure. So, do you see any patterns like throughout the year and stuff in terms of your business and business in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's every business has their seasonality, right? I think for coffee, a lot of times summer is a lull, especially right around this time of year. You got graduations, you got vacations, there's all these things, and for some reason, for coffee, that's a lull for us. That was one of the big things we noticed. So then you have to figure out ways to boost income or do a launch or have something exciting during that time to kind of like push the revenue up.
Did you realize that going in, or was that something that you learned like as
No,
you were scaling your business?
yeah, data
Data. Love it.
over time. Yeah.
What else? What other like nuggets did you find in the data in terms of acquisition, retention, building your business and scaling it?
Yeah. I mean, one thing is like your goal is to not be reliant on one channel, right? For paid traffic, 70% of e-commerce is relies on Meta, right?
Only Meta. Wait, do you mean 70% of e-commerce relies only on Meta, or
That's a primary way to get customers.
okay?
And so, I mean, it's a great platform, but if your goal is to, get acquired eventually, you can't be a one-legged stool. So you need to, start there, but then you need to find other sources of traffic, right? And so that way that because of it's just like being on an Amazon only business, right? It's very dangerous because Amazon is Amazon and they're very unpredictable and they can just flip a switch and then all of a sudden all your traffic is gone. You lost all your rankings just for whatever random reason.
Hmm.
So like that you don't want you need redundancy, you need multi-channel. I think once you have got your paid acquisition funnel working, it's important that you start to, you know,
Okay. And what was your litmus test in terms of saying like, okay, we're ready to spread it out? Were you saying like we're going to give Meta 6 months and then we're going to move over and expand onto Google, or were you saying we want to get to X amount of sales and conversions before we go into another platform?
yeah, I would say definitely master one channel first. And then from there, once you are getting consistent, your numbers are consistent, and you feel comfortable, then find something else. So, I mean, an easy one from Meta is Google, because you can instantly do your own search terms. People are going to be searching for.
Definitely, definitely.
Now that's changing a little bit now with AI, how that works. But for the most part, you know, that I would just start adding like some of these smaller channels.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that we've noticed at Built to Scale at our agency is that the brands that are spending and are active on multiple channels, there's that cross pollination effect that's going on. And that obviously, when what you spoke about in terms of just starting out and you need to have one channel and master that before you move on to the other channel, to your next channel. But what we see constantly is that the ones that are on multiple channels, there's just kind of like this upward trend where people are capitalizing, where people see an ad on Meta and then they'll search it on Google, they'll buy on Amazon and stuff like that. Is that something that you're seeing in your business as well? Like as you expand it?
Yeah, 100%. So, I guess the best way to describe it is think about how you purchase something. Like, what is the first thing you typically do, right? So, you see an ad, you're like, that kind of looks cool. I'm going to wait for a minute. But then, what if you'll either Google it or you'll go straight to Amazon? Like, I'll go straight to Amazon, and then that way I can like look at the reviews and like look at the best price and see how fast I can get it. Mm, And so what people have different like ways that they purchase. So trying to figure out that pathway because that will kind of show you where you need to be next, right? Depending on the
Hmm.
type. I would say certain products, you know, will will be better on certain platforms, right?
And what was
But
like your growth and your learning experience? So you got on Meta first, then you went to Google,
yep. And
and where
then
else are you advertising?
so we do Google, we do some Snapchat, we do getting ready to do TikTok. I'm trying to think what else. Obviously, all of Meta's properties, Instagram as well, YouTube a little bit. That one's a harder nut to crack. I think that's more like doing a lot of good content on that. But yeah, and then obviously Amazon. Once you start getting traction, like I said, people are going to start finding you on Amazon or looking for you on Amazon. So you should be on Amazon so you can capture. You get a halo effect from like if you're on Amazon and you're running paid traffic to your Shopify store, then you're going to get a halo effect on Amazon from all that paid traffic because people are going to see your ads and then go straight to Amazon. Like that's my purchasing behavior. If I see something, I'll go to Amazon first.
Okay, so you have a store
You know
on
what I'm saying?
Amazon. And
Yeah, yeah.
is that what you're seeing? Like, for example, how would you say that your spend pie is cut up versus your order pie?
Um. So the order pie is about I would say 70-30, something like that. D2C and Amazon or 60-40, something like that. And then
And
it would
the
be our
30% is what?
so it would be like 60 to 70% on D2C or Shopify and then 30 to 40% on Amazon.
Okay.
So it's somewhere in those. I mean, it changes
Okay.
depending on the season and whatnot.
But in terms of your spend budget, like, it's
Spend
gonna be
budget,
less
we
than.
spend more on yeah, we definitely spend more on D2C.
Okay, interesting.
'Cause that's a benefit of the buying platform of Amazon. I mean, it's the number one buyer platform in the world, right? They have all the traffic. They wanna
Okay.
keep your customer, right? That's the downside is you don't get the customer information from Amazon legally, right? So, yeah, the more you'll spend most of your money on paid acquisition to your Shopify store, your e-commerce store than you would on Amazon.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. And then in terms of, like, AI, like, how has that or not changed Life Boost Coffee?
That's a good question, and that's something we're still working on and figuring out. Where right now we're going through our Shopify store and just looking at the content and making sure it's what is it, AEO or GEO, whatever the SEO for AI is, right? So we're making sure we're going through the points. There's a certain like setup that you want now for your articles and your content that you put on there, so it's easy for the LLMs to find it so that they'll actually recommend you.
Mhm.
So there's a certain like schema that you need
Yes.
to follow,
Yeah.
which is a
Did
whole other thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Pain in the butt.
So there's this, play in this strategy that's in play when it comes to AEO is that you get your URL, you get your domain, and then you buy your domain plus reviews. So if you're
Yeah,
lifeboostcoffee.com, you buy lifeboostcoffeereviews.com, and then you just put all these reviews because that's what people are how people are searching. They're like, can you, do you
yeah.
find any reviews for this product? And it doesn't necessarily need to be it doesn't necessarily need to be coffee, but that's definitely a strategy that I've seen that works.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
I can see it
cool.
work. Yeah, because that's definitely one of the signals. I know that's a signal. Social is a signal. It's very much like nowadays, like you want to be as many places as you possibly can and have like your message be, in sync with every channel.
Mhm. Mhm.
With each, like that being said, you want to cater to the nuance of that channel, right? Like TikTok,
Okay.
like the personality is different than Instagram, right? So you're trying to cater towards like just don't be doing the same thing on every single channel. The
Yeah,
idea
talking
would
to
be
the
to, yeah, match
yeah,
your message market match, right?
for sure, for sure.
Message market media match, right? As you would say in
Mhm.
direct.
Yeah. And then in terms of growth, have has you spoke about, like, just that steady climb and just going up, but how have you dealt with adversity in terms of setbacks and stuff? I mean, I imagine that there have been setbacks, there have been downs and stuff. We spoke a little bit about before how you found out that, let's say, you know, coffee has like the June gloom effect, where it's hot, people are going outside, and people not might not want to drink as much coffee and avoid hot beverages. So how do you deal with that in terms of your business?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and that just comes down to like what what can you do? What are your options? So I keep like a daily, like a strategic thinking document or a brain dump list or whatever you want to call it, where I just like write ideas out. Like I write down a problem and then I just keep writing ideas out until I come up with a good solution. So for that, like, what can I do? Is there a certain type of sale I can run? Is there a new product that I could launch? So, you see a lot of coffee companies, especially now, uh, like Starbucks and you know any coffee company, they're doing matcha, and you're starting to see refreshers, which are energy drinks. It's a version of an energy drink, right? So these are different types of products that are adjacent to coffee that people are that they're selling for this type of reason. And what happened is, if you notice with Starbucks, they're starting to turn around their business because they're getting a huge surge of Gen Z people coming in the afternoons because they want the refresh. They don't want the coffee. They want the refreshers and they want the matchas.
Okay.
So it's like, what can you do to kind of like either bring in a different audience, give something different that your similar audience, your current audience would want. Yeah, it's just trying to figure out like what you can do. You can cut back ad spend during that time and then focus more on retention. So, like I said, I'll just write down a bunch of things and then I'll prioritize and talk with the team and we'll figure out which one we go after and that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Or
So
we'll
you're
give them all.
focusing,
Yeah,
you're basically going to prioritize a list and saying like, all right, these are the factors that we could control. What are we going to do to change those things?
you got it. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah. Have you ever thought like that just in terms of like your coffee line? Like, I don't think I asked you even like in terms of Life Boost coffee. Like, what is the coffee line? Have you expanded to like matcha and other drinks and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do have a tea line. We did. We've got like, oh my gosh, I think we've got like 50 different SKUs. So the problem we're having is that we have so many SKUs and a lot of these are just, they're fantastic products, but we don't have the time to market them all. Like there's so many things I want to market, but you've got your flagships, right? It's usually
Yeah,
like an 80-20 rule. 80% of your sales are going to come from like
the hero products.
the hero products, right? And the other 20% is going to make up all these other things. And then it's like, how much money and inventory and time and energy does it take for these other things, right? That isn't going to make up the majority of the revenue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if it's an 80-20 headache, so 20% of your revenue is giving you 80% of the headaches, you're going to try to mitigate that. And
Yeah, exactly. So what can I cut? What can I keep? What can I push more marketing in? Then on top of that, you've got innovation to think about, right? How are you innovating? Because you've always got copycat players coming in, right?
yeah, let's talk about cutting. So you've actually cut products from your SKU and said like, all
Oh
right,
yeah.
we're not okay, cool. And then in terms of product innovation, how are you going about that? What does Life Boost Coffee have planned down the road?
Yeah. So, like, one of the things is just watching the trends in the market. Functional coffee has become huge, like, mushroom coffee has become huge. So, like, I love formulating my own products. So, like, all the products we have, I formulated myself. It's just something that, just because I have a pretty deep health background and, I'm always like, just researching and doing like biohacking things on myself. And so I'm usually pretty on top of what's going on in like the supplement and the health industry. So I have a good knowledge base of, especially watching the trends of like, okay, there's a protein coffee there. Why is that trending? So that's trending because of GLP-1s.
Okay.
Everybody's taking GLP-1s now. And what side effect of GLP-1s? Muscle wasting. What fixes muscle wasting? Protein. Obviously, you got to lift too, which I don't know if people are doing that. I think they're just consuming a lot of protein,
Hmm.
which is better than not consuming protein, right? So you're seeing the proteinization of entire industries. And so, when I went to the Arnold this year, which is he has a symposium every year. It's called the Arnold Classic, where it's a huge bodybuilding show, and they have like arm wrestling and there's all these other events, but they have this huge, um, uh, like just like all the major sports nutrition brands are there. Everything was proteinized, like that was
Okay.
it, everything was had creatine in it and everything had protein in it. So it's like, oh, okay. So that's usually where, you start and you formulate ideas of what you can do. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. And then I'll look at that
Hmm.
and then I'll figure out, okay, like how can we do something for Life Boost? And, how do we get it in the price range? You got to look at the prices of what they're offering versus what you can offer. Right.
Yeah. What was there ever a point like when you started Life Boost Coffee that you just said to yourself like, it's just coffee. Why me? Like they're probably, and you probably found out that there's so many coffee companies like Life Boost. No?
There wasn't. There were, and I hear that a lot. Coffee, you got people out there say coffee is coffee. Doesn't matter if it's. I'm like, that's like saying, organic broccoli is the same as regular broccoli. It's not.
Okay.
There's
But along your journey, did you find like other coffee companies that are doing something similar to what you're
yeah,
doing?
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. But in comparison, so like the way I looked at it was like there's the better for you niche, and then you start to see that it's a whole food and beverage thing, like the better for you. That's what's driving all the trends right now. Obviously, proteinization is a better for you product, right? Versus you know Little Debbie snacks versus Little Debbie snacks with protein powder. That will be considered a better for you product. So there's like a huge like amount of companies that are creating that. And you can sell that for premium because it's got better ingredients in it that are better for your body. So that
Okay.
was kind of the way I looked at it. It was like you got coffee, then you got better for you coffee. And then like from there, like what else is around that? Can you do the same thing with tea? So that's why we created the tea line. We used the similar principles of Life Boost to create the tea. And then, yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. Like why me? I think one thing I learned earlier from one of my buddies who was my business partner in Fat Loss Factor was instead of saying why me, he would just say, why not me? And I
Why not?
think that was like a pivotal moment in my life. I'm like, yeah, why not me?
And you feel
Eh,
like there's
why not me?
Yeah, and you feel like there's just enough place in the market for everyone.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very
Abundance
cool.
mentality, right? There's enough for everybody.
I'm sorry, what was that mentality?
An abundance mentality.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, so what would you say like is the key from like getting that idea to actually, continue? What was that the main thing is just in terms of just keep plugging away or was there other things that got you, you know, on your path?
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's just how I've just approached life. Is just slow and steady wins the race. So I am the one who will just like I have friends who are incredibly fast executors. That was not me. I've learned to be much faster because of them, but like I never had that superpower of being able to like come up with something and have it done in a week and like have it all done. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. So I've just been, you know what, my thing is consistent persistence.
Okay.
Is just keep going, 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 and just you'll get
So
there.
what kind of numbers can you tell us about the business in terms of growth, in terms of scale?
Uh, yeah, our thing is, we're trying to grow, 20% year over year. I think that's comfortable. And like to predict like inventory and stuff, that's kind of what we base stuff off of. And then, just, for us, like increasing our lifetime value, like how do we increase that? Because you increase that, obviously you can spend more on paid media. And then, like I said, you want your gross margin to be, the higher it is, the better. I would say like right around, 50% should be a good goal. If you can do like 60, like if you can do like 80%, which is what like SaaS companies do, right? Like it's insane. Like you have so much money to play with to advertise, to, do R&D, to do whatever. But with physical products, it's much harder to get like insane like margins on your products. So like I would say we shoot for a 50% gross margin.
Okay. And that 20% year over year, has that been something that you've been consistent with? Like, are you able to look back and say, all right, we've hit that year over year, or have there been ups and downs
Yeah,
throughout
there's
your
been a little
journey?
bit of ups and downs, but I mean, it's just like like your growth will never be like this. Usually it's right. So
Uh-huh.
just as long as their general direction is up, you have some down, but just as long as you can keep it going up, I think
Yeah.
that's what do they call that? The master's curve or something. There's a name for
Hmm.
it.
Well, it's that slow and steady wins the race that you're. It's also obviously, you're not at a casino, but again, like you're not going to win every hand at the casino, right? In fact, you'll probably lose most hands. But let's say you're a world class player and you're going to win the tournament, right?
Right.
Or, you know, there are going to be some hands that you lose. But the idea is to stay in the game and not pull out and get scared. Yeah, very cool, very cool. And where does Life Boost like go from here? Like, are you're just gonna continue going, or you're looking to exit? Like, what's your strategy in terms of?
Yeah, no, I mean, my whole thing is you always build to sell, and just in case. I mean, like everybody's got a price, and so if somebody comes and just is like, "Yeah, I want to buy you for this amount," and you're like, "That's like way bigger than the number I thought," then yeah, you're probably gonna take it. So
Yeah.
you always build to sell. So we're constantly just reworking and just making sure that like this year for us, and going into next year is going to be a year of just re-architecting the business
Okay.
structure to make sure that it's organized and there's clarity. I've been on a huge like clarity is super important. Like what is the end result of your business? What is the end result of like what you want in life? Like what
Yeah,
is your
for
purpose?
sure.
Like how like you have all these employees. Like what like what are you doing for them? Like what is the end result of like how do you manage them?
How many employees do you have now?
40 to 50, something
40
around
to
there.
50, and I imagine it just started out just you, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. And you guys are only on online, or do you guys advertise in brick and mortar newspapers? Are
So we've tried newspaper. We've dabbled a little bit in newspapers. I mean, we'll do postcards and stuff. Newspapers, I think we've done it maybe once. It's something that it's on the list to go back to. We just started pushing into retail this year. It's a whole other completely different ball game. Like it's totally different than
uh-huh.
so that's it requires a whole other team.
That's what I was going to say. You spoke about earlier how you kind of split that CMO role up, and
Yeah.
it wasn't a
That
magic
would be
trick.
a,
It
a,
was
a third team almost.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that CMO that you split, which was not a magic trick, you split them into acquisition marketing and retention marketing, and then you have fulfill.
And then retail,
You would have
which you
retail.
can like use, like we'll like have people in the other ones also help in retail right now while it's small. But as you grow, you'll need to, have your own special team.
Do you feel like that retail and a lot of times when especially on this show when I'm speaking with guests, we talk about different scaling strategies. I talk about like mountain peaks. So there's, you focus on the first one, right? Your acquisition, then you focus on affiliate, email, and then obviously lifetime value and retention marketing. Do you feel like the retail being in brick and mortar store will be, let's call it a higher peak than and be more bring more revenue for the company?
It can definitely be that for sure. And so this is one of those areas where we're trading very carefully because it's the area where it's really easy to like lose all your money if you do it wrong. Because you won't be able if you try to take a huge account like Whole Foods and then you try to fill the purchase orders for that and then you don't get paid for, whatever the terms say, like 30 to 60 days, you're the
30.
one putting the catch. And if they have like they want you in 1,000 stores and each store wants, X amount of bags of coffee, you have to float all that until you get paid.
Uh-huh.
So so you have to think it's a different type of a strategy. And so we're approaching it very cautiously and not like going for the biggest stores out of the gate. It's a lot of iteration and testing and you you know getting feedback, what stores like and dislike, how they like you to market, how they don't like you to market. They all have their own rule sets. Yeah, like I said, it's a whole other can of worms that we're just trying to navigate slowly
Well, you
to.
say can of worms now. Does that imply that you're kind of on the fence with it, that you're like, this might be something?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's completely foreign to me because I've always been online. It's interesting how
Okay.
it works 'cause we just got back from a holiday show, which was basically it was like it's like 900 vendors at this show and like 300 people and that were attending the show for all the 900 vendors. But those 300 people are the buyers for all these like national chains stores. And so is literally like walking into a Costco warehouse and just free samples everywhere. Like I was like, I own that product, I own that product, I want that product's in my pantry, that product's in my pantry. It was interesting, but it's like seeing like that feedback is invaluable of what they think of your product. So you bring your product, you have them try it, then you watch. Like I like watching the faces to see how they respond after they take that first sip, right? So it's just kind of getting that, then asking them questions and see what they like, what their your feedback was. Like some of them will be like, your packaging is off. I'll be like, okay, that's good to know because I thought that too. So that's something we got to go back and fix. And then another person be like, oh, we really like the flavor of this. Let's buy some right now. I'm like, okay, awesome. So we know that they like the flavor, and so it's like all this feedback that you take in. So
And what was this show at?
huh? It was a
What?
holiday show for one of the major distribution centers. So in retail, there's two major distribution centers. There's KeHE and UNFI. And they hold shows for their vendors to introduce them to the buyers. And so we
Very
went,
interesting. So it's
yeah,
mutually beneficial.
yeah, for sure.
Very cool. And then what about like Starbucks, like or like local coffee shops? Is that that's probably a third route that you could take, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's, I have a whole plan to build those out, but that landscape is quickly changing. It used to be owning coffee shops was, a path to profitability, but what you're finding is like a lot of these like companies, bigger companies, they're finding that their retail presence is much more profitable than their cafe presence, like being in grocery stores and stuff. So you're starting to see them shut down some of the coffee shops and putting more into like
Yeah. Okay.
selling at stores. And so I was just reading an article recently talking about how, you know, having a coffee shop now is more of a brand play for these guys versus a profit center. So I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh,
Hmm.
okay.
Like
So it
just a
kind of
brand,
makes you
pure
right.
brand marketing.
Yeah.
So almost
Uh,
like a loss leader where they feel
yeah.
like they may not be making money on it, but it's just getting the brand
Exactly.
out.
Exactly.
People like it, and then they'll go online. Very cool. That's also something obviously that you need to have a good CFO in play to really know how to deal with that. And also it's also that whole world of I guess leaving the online world and going more to brick and mortar is to understand the effects of your let's say conventional marketing as opposed to online marketing, because especially if you're like a data nerd and just looking at the numbers, like that's very comforting. But all of a sudden you leave that world and you're trying to figure out like how many people saw that billboard driving on the interstate, right? And then they bought coffee. That's a much harder equation
Yeah.
to calculate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's much more difficult when it comes to the branding aspect. And you can see why some of the big companies, they spend so much money on branding. And it's like coming from direct marketing where you're like really focused on conversion rate and, your CAC and yeah, all this, it's a different way to look at it.
Yeah. Do you feel like
And
that's like a world we're that you're just not in? Like you're not just not able to sit at that table?
no, I think there's value in both. I think that my whole thing is like I like to spend money. I just don't like to waste money. Right. So figuring out how to get the best bang for your buck when doing that until you have an enormous budget where you have to spend it, right? Because you've been allotted X amount of millions per year. Like, how are you going to spend it to increase the brand? Right? It's kind of a different strategy than here's your X million, what's your CAC, your LTV, and all that. like that works to a point. But I think after you like X amount of the population has your product, like, is it more effective to keep doing that versus a big branding play? I don't know. I mean, obviously it works because, Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola still, right? Uh, and you don't see them like really driving deep into direct marketing. Like it's
Hmm.
a whole other level of understanding, I think, that I think there's value in for sure. But like I said, where I'm at is like, I don't mind spending money. I just don't want to waste it. And I still want to have some control because I don't
Yeah.
have millions upon millions of dollars budget that those guys have.
Yeah. I love that nuance. Yeah. And it's going to eat me up if I don't ask you this. What are you drinking over there?
This is, I cold brewed my coffee, my Life Boost coffee, and I put our creamer in it, which is called Mito creamer, which is like C8 MCT oil, collagen, and we have an ingredient in it called Mito Prime, which is an antioxidant that is the only antioxidant that can penetrate the mitochondria of the cells.
Very cool. And I'm sure it's super tasty.
Of course. It's actually, I
Awesome.
think this is actually we have a coconut macadamia flavor.
Cool.
So that's,
And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you what's your favorite go-to morning coffee drink?
you know what? Honestly, I have bags of coffee at my house. I just rotate through them because I want to make sure that I'm tasting as many of the flavors as I can and the regular roast. So I'm just like every time I make a new batch of coffee, it's a different flavor or a different roast. Just so I
Okay.
can like for me, it's just like making sure that's as good as we say it is.
You're grinding your own beans, burr grinder every morning?
So yes, but I'm also like I was for the longest time. I've backed off now to do ground because I want to test both. Like
Okay. And
because
how
it's
how
just like it's like if you look at like how things are made, it's like obviously the whole bean is going to be the very best experience because it's the closest to from the earth, right? And then ground will be second because it's just one step removed. And then next is going to be, if you're doing like a coffee pod, like you're adding another additional layer, and then it's instant, right? It's going to be like 4 layers down because that's like super processed to create an instant coffee that just dissolves in water.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like trying to taste as many of these as I can.
I
I'm all
love it. I love
caffeinated
it.
all day.
So do you have like a ton of different coffee machines and stuff like pour overs,
Yeah,
drip and everything?
I got a lot.
What's your favorite way to prepare?
My personal favorite is cold brew. I absolutely love cold brew coffee, and so like during the mornings I will have a cold brew coffee with a splash of heavy cream, and then the afternoons I have what they call like a super automatic espresso machine. It's like the beans are that you grind right there. The machine has a bean grinder in it, and then you can click a button to say if you want like one shot of espresso, if you want two shots of espresso, if you want like an americano, if you want all these
Yeah.
things. And so
Yeah.
usually my afternoon is I'll just do americano with an extra shot of espresso with a splash of heavy cream, and then I'll throw some cinnamon in it because that's good for your blood sugar. And it's yeah, I think I said a splash of heavy cream. Yeah, and that'll be
Nice.
my afternoon. Or sometimes I'll put honey in it, honey and cinnamon, or here I'll do one thing I have been doing is like coconut water and 2 shots of espresso over ice.
Okay.
So that's super refreshing. Like when it's really hot out, so you get the hydration from the coconut water and the 2 shots of espresso give you just a good boost.
That sounds like a really good boost. Very nice. And also that sweetness of the coconut water.
Yeah, it's good. It actually is surprisingly good. You wouldn't think it would be, but it's good.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I've been getting into for an afternoon boost, getting into cafe crema.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like a big espresso. There's a lot of crema on top. I don't even add milk to it. I just go straight.
Just love the crema, huh?
Yeah, yeah. If
Okay.
you get some good beans and stuff, you just
Yeah.
the machine grinds them down, and yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Where can people go to try Life Boost coffee and learn a little bit more about you and the coffee business?
Yeah, I mean, lifeboostcoffee.com, that's the website. As for me, I honestly, I've like cut back on a lot of the social media just because I found that it's like now it is just very negative. So, and like I'm trying to like keep my mind like as positive as possible and just focused. And then when I get down the rabbit hole
Gotcha.
of that, it's like, so I'm not on social media that much. Like I don't really like have a presence there. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I have a profile that I check maybe once a week if see if I have messages. But my email address is drc@lifeboostcoffee.com.
Okay, there
If
you go.
anybody wants to get a hold of me there, they can.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Charles. This has been really great. Thanks for joining me on the Built to Scale podcast today.
Hey, brother, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. It's been a great
For
chat.
sure. Thanks for listening to the Built to Scale podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a conversation about what it really takes to build and scale in today's market. For more information about Built to Scale and how we help companies grow, visit builttoscale.co. If you have suggestions for future guests or topics, send us a note at podcast@builttoscale.co. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, this is your host, Shmuel Hirschberg. And remember to keep building, keep testing, and keep scaling.